Close your eyes for 1 second. Picture a fire. Not a fire in a fireplace. A real fire, out in the open, under a black sky full of stars. No roof. No walls. Just you, some other people, and the fire. Now go back in time. Way back. 50,000 years back. There is no light in the world at night except this fire. No phones. No screens. No noise from cars. Just wind, and the sound of wood popping in the flames. You are sitting close to the fire. The smoke keeps blowing into your face. Your eyes water. You cough. You wave your hand at it. This happens every single night. It has happened every night for your whole life. But one night, something is different. The wind shifts. The smoke fills the small space where you sit. And instead of feeling sick, you feel strange. Calm. Warm inside your head. A little bit far away, like you are floating just above your own body. You do not know why. You do not have a word for it. But you like it. And so, the next night, you sit a little closer to the smoke. On purpose. That, right there, might be the true start of smoking. Not a plan. Not a big idea. Just a feeling. A feeling that felt good and got repeated, again and again, until it became something humans have done for tens of thousands of years. This is the story of that feeling. Where it came from. How old it really is. And how far back in time we can actually prove it. Here is something most people never think about. Smoking did not start with cigarettes. It did not start with tobacco. It did not even start with people choosing to smoke on purpose. It may have started as a total accident, sitting next to fire, breathing in something that changed the way our ancestors' brains worked, long before anyone knew what a brain even was. To understand this, we first need to talk about fire itself. Because you cannot smoke anything without fire. And fire has been part of the human story for a very, very long time. Much longer than most people guess. The oldest strong proof of controlled fire comes from a place called Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. Scientists found burnt plant bits and burnt bone deep inside that cave. This was not a fire from a lightning strike outside. This was a fire kept alive on purpose inside a cave protected from wind and rain. That fire is about 1 million years old. 1 million years. Let that sit in your mind for a second. That is so long ago, humans like us did not even exist yet. The beings sitting by that fire were an older type of human called Homo erectus. Smaller brain. Heavier bones over the eyes. But they knew how to keep a fire burning. And every single one of them, every single night, breathed in smoke. Think about that. For hundreds of thousands of years, before writing, before farming, before villages, before almost everything we call civilization, humans and near-humans sat by fires and breathed smoke into their lungs. Every night. It was not a choice. It was just life. And here is where it gets interesting. Smoke is not just smoke. When you burn wood, you get one kind of smoke. But when fire touches certain plants, it releases something else. Certain leaves and seeds, when they burn, let out chemicals that can change the way a brain feels. Not all plants do this. But some do. And those plants were growing wild all around early humans, long before anyone farmed them on purpose. So picture it again. A group of early humans sits by a fire. Maybe some wild plant, growing nearby, gets tossed in by accident or blown in by the wind. The smoke rises. People breathe it in, the same as any other night. But this time, something feels different in their heads. They do not know the word chemical. They do not know the word brain. All they know is a feeling. And feelings, especially good ones, get remembered. They get repeated. This is where our story really begins. Not with a plan. Not with a person deciding, I will invent smoking today. But with an accident repeated enough times by enough people across enough years that it slowly turned into something on purpose. Here is a strange fact. Your brain has small parts inside it called receptors. Think of them like tiny locks. And certain chemicals act like keys. When the right key meets the right lock, something happens inside your head. A feeling changes. A mood shifts. A signal fires. Now here is the strange part. Your brain has receptors that fit perfectly with chemicals found in certain plants, like cannabis. But your brain did not build those receptors because of cannabis. Those receptors were already there, doing other jobs, long before any human ever smoked a single leaf. They help control your mood, your memory, your hunger, your pain. This system was already running inside early humans, before anyone ever lit a plant on fire. So when the first person breathed in smoke from a burning plant like this, their brain was not confused. It was not fighting something strange and foreign. It was more like the lock had been sitting there for a long time, quietly waiting, and one day, by pure accident, the right key finally showed up. That is a wild thought. The good feeling did not come from nowhere. It came from something already built into the human body, long before humans even understood fire, plants, or their own minds. This is important, because it means early humans were not doing anything unnatural. They were not tricking their bodies. They were simply meeting, by accident, a chemical that fit a lock already sitting inside them. Nature built the lock first. The key came later, floating up in the smoke. Now let's slow down and ask a harder question. Just because this could have happened does not prove that it did happen, again and again on purpose. So what proof do we actually have? Not guesses. Not maybe. Real physical proof dug out of the ground. The strongest early proof comes from a place high up in the mountains of Central Asia, called the Pamir Mountains. There, deep inside old graves, archaeologists found small wooden containers. Inside those containers were stones. The stones had clearly been heated, over and over, until they were super hot. And next to those hot stones, they found burnt plant matter. Cannabis. Not the weak wild kind used for rope or food. This was a strong kind, the kind that would have produced a real, noticeable effect when burned and breathed in. This was placed inside a grave, next to a body on purpose. Not by accident. Someone chose to put burning tools and strong cannabis next to a person after they died. That tells us this was not random. This was ritual. This was meaning. This happened around 2,500 years ago. That is real solid proof. But here is a question worth sitting with for a second. Just because this is the oldest proof we have found, does that mean it is the oldest time this ever happened? Or does it just mean this is the oldest proof that managed to survive? Think about it this way. Stone survives for millions of years in the ground. But dried leaves, seeds, and soft wood rot away in just a few hundred years, especially in wet or warm places. So if people were smoking plants long before this, in wetter parts of the world, the proof may have simply rotted away completely, leaving nothing behind for us to find. That means the true first time humans smoked on purpose could be much, much older than anything we have physically found. We are not just missing pieces of the story. We may be missing entire chapters, because nature erased the paper they were written on. Now let's talk about a very old writer named Herodotus. He lived in ancient Greece a long time ago, and he wrote about a group of people called the Scythians, who lived on wide open grasslands far from Greece. Herodotus wrote that these people would build small, closed tents. Inside the tents, they placed stones heated until glowing hot. Then they threw seeds from a hemp plant onto those hot stones. The tent filled with thick smoke. And the people inside, breathing that smoke, would shout out loud from pleasure. For a very long time, many people thought Herodotus was just telling a wild story, maybe making things sound bigger than they really were, the way old storytellers sometimes did. But then, much later, diggers found actual Scythian graves. Inside, they found small metal containers, heated stones, and burnt hemp seeds, still stuck to the surface. Herodotus was not exaggerating at all. He was simply telling the truth about something real that he had personally seen with his own eyes. If anything, his plain words did not fully capture how strong and strange that experience must have felt for the people inside those smoke-filled tents. So now we have two strong clues. Deep inside our own brains, a system already built to react to certain plant smoke. And deep inside the ground, physical proof that ancient people, thousands of years ago, were using fire and plants together, on purpose, in ways that clearly meant something important to them. But this still leaves a huge question sitting in front of us. If people in Asia were doing this over 2,000 years ago, what were people doing on the other side of the world, in a place that had a completely different plant nobody in Asia or Europe had ever even heard of? That plant is tobacco, and its story takes us somewhere even older and even stranger than anything we have covered so far. Let's talk about tobacco. This is the plant most people think of first when they hear the word smoking. But tobacco has a story that goes back much, much further than most people ever guess. Tobacco only grew in one part of the world at first. The Americas. North America and South America. It did not grow anywhere else on Earth. Not in Europe. Not in Africa. Not in Asia. This means for thousands and thousands of years, most of the world had no idea this plant even existed. Then, in the year 1492, ships from Europe crossed the ocean and reached the islands near what we now call the Caribbean. A man named Columbus led one of those ships. And Columbus wrote down, in his own notes, something strange he saw. He saw local people walking around holding small glowing sticks. They would breathe in smoke from these sticks, and then let the smoke out again, sometimes through their nose. Columbus and his men had never seen anything like this before in their entire lives. They did not have a word for it. It looked completely new and strange to them. But here is the twist. It was not new at all. It only felt new to the people from Europe. For the people already living there, this was old. Very old. A normal part of life, passed down for a very long time. Some of Columbus's own crew tried it soon after, just out of curiosity. And within a short amount of time, sailors were carrying tobacco back across the ocean to Europe, where almost nobody had ever seen or smelled anything like it before. But how old is tobacco use really in the Americas? Scientists have found chemical traces of tobacco stuck inside very old smoking pipes. Some of these pipes are around 3,500 years old, found in what is now the southeastern part of the United States. That alone is old, but it gets much older. In the year 2019, a group of scientists made a discovery that shocked a lot of people. Out in the Great Salt Lake Desert, in the state of Utah, they found an old fire pit. Inside that fire pit were seeds. Seeds from a wild type of tobacco plant that used to grow naturally in that area. These seeds were not scattered around like they blew in by accident on the wind. They were grouped together, close to the center of the fire, in a way that strongly suggests someone placed them there on purpose. This fire pit is about 12,000 years old. 12,000 years. Long before any pottery in that region. Long before any known smoking pipe in that area. This pushes the story of tobacco use back thousands of years earlier than most people ever imagined. And this raises a huge question. If people in Utah were putting tobacco seeds into fire 12,000 years ago, what were people doing with plants in other parts of the world at that very same time? Because 12,000 years ago, humans were not only in America. They were spread out across almost the entire planet already. In Africa, in Europe, in Asia, in Australia. The idea of wanting to change how your mind feels is not something that belongs to one country, or one people, or one plant. It shows up again and again, in completely different places, with completely different plants, that never had any contact with each other. That is a very big clue. Some scientists have a theory about this. They believe that wanting to feel different, to shift your mind away from normal, everyday awareness, might actually be a deep built-in drive inside living creatures. Not just humans. Animals too. Elephants, for example, have been seen eating fruit that has gone soft and fermented on the ground. Fruit that can actually make them feel dizzy or strange, similar to how alcohol affects a person. They do not eat it by accident. They search for it. In cold places like Siberia, reindeer have been seen eating a certain type of mushroom that changes how their bodies feel. And here is something almost too strange to believe. Other reindeer have been seen drinking the urine of reindeer that already ate those mushrooms, because the strange effect passes through and stays active. Reindeer quietly sharing drugs with each other, out in the snow, with nobody around to see it but scientists with cameras. If this drive runs this deep in animals, then it becomes much easier to believe that early humans, long before pipes, long before pottery, long before writing of any kind, were already doing something similar. Choosing certain smoke. Choosing certain plants. Not because someone taught a class about it, but because through pure trial and lived experience, they had learned which smoke felt good, and which smoke felt very, very wrong. And very wrong, in some cases meant deadly. This was not a safe science lab with clear instructions and warning labels. This was real trial and error, with real danger attached to every single try. Some plants gave a pleasant, floaty feeling. Others could make a person violently sick or worse. But the humans who survived these early experiments remembered exactly what happened. And they told others. Around fires, in the dark, using only spoken words, this kind of knowledge passed from person to person, for thousands of years, long before anyone thought to write any of it down on paper, or stone, or anything at all. In our next part, we step away from getting high and step into something completely different. Because for a very long time, in many separate parts of the world, smoke was not just for pleasure or ritual. Smoke was medicine. Here is something that might surprise you. Long before smoking was about pleasure or ritual, in many places around the world, smoke was medicine. Real medicine, used by real doctors, written down in some of the oldest medical writing we still have today. In ancient Egypt, there is a very old document called the Ebers Papyrus. It is one of the oldest medical texts ever found, written thousands of years ago. Inside it, Egyptian healers wrote down treatments for many kinds of sickness. And some of those treatments involved breathing in smoke from burning plants, especially for problems with the throat and the lungs. Think about that for a second. A person with a cough or trouble breathing was told to breathe in smoke on purpose as treatment. That sounds backwards to us today, but it was not a random idea. Some of the plants they burned did have real effects on the body when the smoke was breathed in. The healers of that time were working with what they had and testing it over and over across many, many patients across many, many years. The ancient Greeks did something similar. They used heated smoke and steam from herbs as part of healing. A very famous Greek doctor, one whose name doctors still swear an oath to even today, wrote about breathing in herbal smoke to help treat sickness in the lungs and chest. The idea was simple, in a way. The lungs sit deep inside the body, hard to reach directly. But smoke travels straight into the lungs fast, with almost nothing standing in its way. So if the plant carries something helpful, sending it in through smoke seemed like a fast, direct path to where it was needed most. We actually still use this basic idea today. Modern inhalers, used by people with breathing problems like asthma, send medicine straight into the lungs, through a fine mist, instead of through a pill that has to travel all through the body first. The old idea did not disappear completely. It just changed shape and lost the fire. In India, an old system of medicine called Ayurveda, going back well over 3,000 years, describes a practice of breathing in smoke from certain herbs using special pipes for very specific health problems. This was not random either. Different plants were matched to different symptoms, with careful instructions written down and passed on, refined slowly over many, many generations of healers. So across Egypt, across Greece, across India, and in other ancient places too, we see the exact same basic pattern repeating itself, in cultures that had no contact with each other at all. People inhaling smoke from plants on purpose, not to feel good, and not for ritual, but simply because again and again, it seemed to help. That tells us something important. This was not one strange idea from one strange culture. This was something many separate groups of humans discovered on their own, again and again, in different corners of the world, using different plants, arriving at a very similar answer through nothing but careful observation and repeated trial. Now let's shift to a different reason humans gathered around smoke. Not for medicine, not for pleasure, but for connection. Humans are built to live in groups. From very early on, being alone in the wild was extremely dangerous. Groups that stayed close and trusted each other deeply had a much better chance of surviving harsh conditions, wild animals, and hard times. Trust between people was not just nice to have. It could be the difference between living and dying. And here is something modern science has actually studied and confirmed. When a group of people go through the exact same intense experience together, at the exact same time, it can quietly sync up the activity happening inside their brains. Scientists can even see this happen using brain scanners in modern experiments. Shared intense experiences build shared trust in a way that is measurable, not just something people simply feel and imagine. So picture a small group of ancient humans sitting closely together inside a small, enclosed space, maybe a tent, maybe a cave, breathing in the exact same thick smoke from the exact same fire at the exact same time. Whatever that smoke was doing to their minds, they were all experiencing it together, side by side, in that exact moment. That shared moment was not just about getting a nice feeling. It was quietly building something deeper. Trust. Connection. A shared memory that only that specific group of people would ever fully understand or fully share with each other. In a world with real danger around every corner, from wild animals, harsh weather, and other rival groups, this kind of deep trust between people was not just a nice extra thing to have. It could genuinely help keep a group of people alive together through hard times that a single person alone could never survive. So when we picture ancient humans gathered closely around a fire, breathing in smoke together, we should not just picture a party. We should picture something closer to quiet, invisible glue, holding a small group of people tightly together, long before anyone ever had a word for friendship or trust or teamwork. But there is a darker turn still coming in this story. Because what once was slow, careful, sacred, and deeply meaningful to ancient people eventually collided with a completely different world. A faster world. A world driven by money, by trade, and eventually by machines built to manufacture addiction on a massive scale. Now we reach the harder part of this story, the part that is not calm and not gentle at all. For thousands of years in the Americas, tobacco was never just a habit. It was sacred. It held deep meaning. People used it in healing ceremonies. They used it to talk with the spirit world. They used it when making important agreements between different groups of people. If a person blew smoke toward someone else, that was not a small, casual act. It was a form of blessing, a sign of deep respect, a way of connecting two people or two groups in a way that meant something real and important to everyone involved. This is exactly why tobacco use in many of these old cultures stayed careful and controlled for thousands and thousands of years. When something is treated as sacred, people naturally treat it with care. They do not waste it. They do not rush it. They do not use it without real thought and real meaning behind it. But then tobacco crossed the ocean and reached Europe in the late 1500s. And what happened next moved incredibly fast. Within just a few decades, tobacco went from being a strange, unknown plant to a huge, valuable trade good shipped between many different countries. By the 1600s, it was already being sold and traded across large parts of the world. By the 1700s, a powdered form of tobacco, called snuff, breathed in through the nose, had become extremely fashionable among wealthy people all across Europe. Rich families would carry small, decorated boxes just to hold their snuff. By the 1800s, cigars had spread almost everywhere. And then, in the early 1900s, something changed everything completely. Machines were built that could roll cigarettes fast, cheap, and in massive, massive numbers. Suddenly, smoking was not slow anymore. It was not sacred anymore. It did not require any special ceremony, or deep meaning, or careful thought. It was cheap. It was fast. It was everywhere. And it was built on purpose to be as addictive as possible. What had taken native peoples thousands of years to slowly build into something careful, respectful, and deeply meaningful was turned by European industry into a fast, mass-produced product in just a few short centuries. And then, in the 20th century, something even darker happened. Big tobacco companies learned from their own private scientists that cigarettes were causing serious harm, including cancer. And instead of warning the public, many of these companies spent years and huge amounts of money actively hiding that information from everyone. They ran ads that made smoking look glamorous, exciting, even healthy. Some of them even aimed advertising directly at teenagers and even younger children, hoping to build lifelong customers as early as possible. They changed the chemistry of cigarettes on purpose to make the addictive effects hit faster and harder than ever before. Think about that difference for a second. A shaman placing cannabis on heated stones, next to a person who has just died, back in 500 BC, was performing something sacred, careful, and deeply respectful. A tobacco company executive, sitting in an office chair in 1960, signing off on an ad campaign built to hook teenagers, was doing something completely different. Both of them were technically working with smoke. But that is honestly where almost all the similarity ends. So now, after everything we have covered, let's come back to our original question. When did ancient humans start smoking? The honest truth is, we do not know the exact moment. And we may never know it for certain. What we do have is strong physical proof reaching back about 12,000 years and reasonable, careful theories that stretch back much, much further than that. But the deeper drive underneath all of this, the simple, human desire to feel something different, to share a powerful moment together with other people, and to use natural things around us to try to heal our bodies, that drive is almost certainly far older than any object we have ever dug out of the ground. It might be as old as fire itself. It might be as old as the very first moment some early human looked at smoke curling up into the night sky and quietly thought, that felt different last time. Let's do that again. That is not some kind of weakness or mistake. That is simple human curiosity at its very core. Now let's go all the way back to where we started, at the very beginning of this story. A small fire, burning under a wide, dark sky. A tired hunter sitting close to the flames. Smoke drifting straight into his face, the same as always. But this time, for reasons he cannot explain and has no words for, he feels calm. He feels warm inside his chest. He feels somehow a little bit lighter than usual. He has no idea what just happened inside his brain. He has no idea this single, small, quiet moment will eventually lead to rituals, medicines, industries, and habits that will still be here, tens of thousands of years later. He just knows one simple thing. It felt good. And so, tomorrow night, he will sit close to the fire again. And somewhere out there tonight, if you catch a small whiff of wood smoke drifting through cool night air, just remember this. You are breathing in something incredibly old. Something your ancestors breathed in, long before written history ever began. You are simply doing what humans have quietly done, for longer than anyone can fully measure. You are breathing,